Hey there everybody, welcome to lab number 26 where today we're going to be talking about writing a methods section. Alright, so for your last paper, what we're going to be having you do is writing a methods section of your research study design. So you may or may not have written a methods section before. So if you've written one before, it's probably going to be a little bit of a review for you. But overall, I think this is a good report that we can do to get you the skills that you're required to them. So normally we'd actually go through and I'd ask you to kind of name off what each of section of a research paper are in kind of the order they come in. But we're just going to go ahead and run through them real quick here. This is the order that a research paper generally goes in. So for this final paper, now I want you to know, and I'm afraid that I'm going to be getting papers with all of this in here, but for the final paper, the only thing you're going to write is the title page, an abstract, a methods section, and a reference section. So you will not be writing an introduction, you will not be writing results. This is all going to be methods based. So as we've learned in this semester, replicability is not possible without the methods section, which is exactly why we're going to be working specifically on the methods section entirely. So as you write, make sure that you practice and be mindful about how you can communicate what your group has planned, making sure it's all clear and detailed as much as possible. So what normally goes into a methods section? Well, normally there's about 4 sections, and in fact, I'm going to be encouraging you to write about these 4 sections in your methods section. So those sections are participants. What is it about your participants? How did you choose your participants? How many participants were in the study? Where were they enrolled? Were they enrolled in a college class? Additionally, you'll also need to indicate your materials. What kind of measures did you use? Did you use validated measures? What are the reliabilities on those measures if you can get them? Additionally, you'll also have to encourage what kind of design. So what kind of design was this? Was it a longitudinal design? Did you have a 2x2 factorial ANOVA design? Tell me what you did. Tell me exactly what kind of analysis plan we're planning. And the procedure is exactly following up to that, where we talk about what the actual analysis plan is. Tell me, what is the procedures that you will be taking throughout this in order to get the results that you desire? So now we're going to be breaking down each section individually. So let's go ahead and start off with the participants section of it. So in this part of the method section, you should be able to describe the participants you would have in your study in your experiment, including who they were, how many there were, and how they were selected. Include these details about your participants and how they're chosen, and really who they were and any unique features about them that may set them apart from the general population. For example, college students are different from that of the normal population. So if you plan on using a random sampling design to choose your participants, then it should be noted here. However, if you're using a convenience sample, that's where things should be noted. So at the very minimum, this part of your methods section must convey who would be in your study, so the population from which your participants were drawn, and any restrictions on your pool of participants. So, for example, if your study consists of female college students from a small private college in the Midwest, well, you need to indicate that that is exactly the population that you're pulling from. So this part of your methods section should also really explain how many participants were in your study, right? How many were assigned to each condition, if you have conditions in your study, and basic characteristics of your participants, such as how many the sex, the age, the ethnicity, or even the religion, if that's part of your study and is necessary. So in this subsection, that subsection being the participants section, it is also important to explain why your participants took part in your research study. So that's saying like how were they recruited? Were they recruited? Did they receive course credit for this? Like for example, was it advertised at a college or was it advertised at a hospital? Did participants receive incentives for taking part in your research? So did they get money for participating in your research? These are things that you need to indicate in the participants section. So additionally, you need to explain how participants will be assigned to each group. Will they be randomly assigned to conditions, or was there some selection method that was used? Information on the participants really helps other researchers understand how your study was performed. And really, additionally, how generalizable the results may be. And if, as we've been discussing in this class so much, is replicability. Can another researcher replicate your results? Well, they need to know about the population that you're pulling from in order to replicate your results. If they so really, and I want you to think about this throughout the entire study, throughout the entire paper, um, think about what it is that you need if you are another researcher, what you would need in order to run the study that you're doing. So let's talk about the next section, right? What goes in the materials subheader of your paper, right? So this is where you'll describe the materials, measures, any equipment, any stimuli used in the study. This may include something like testing instruments, technical equipment, books, or even images you used to participate in your research. If you plan on using some type of psychological assessment or special equipment during the course of the study, it should be noted in this part of the methods section. For standard and expected equipment, such as things like computer screens, television screens, videos, keyboards, and radios, you can simply name the device and you don't need to provide much further explanation unless it's like pertinent to your study. So I have seen studies where they'll actually note the size of the monitor that they use because that's a precise part of the study. But generally, if it's just some sort of TV, you just need to state that standardly that's what it was. So if you plan on using like a computer to administer some sort of psychological assessment, you would need to name the specific assessment you use, but you wouldn't simply need to state the actual features of the device unless it was very precise or it needed to be that particular device for the assessment to be run. However, with specialized equipment, especially if it's something that's like complex or created for like some sort of niche purpose, it should be given greater detail. In some instances, such as if you created a special material or apparatus for your study, you may need to provide an illustration for this so that the item can be included in there. So you might include this in an appendix or something like that, but if it's depend on how much it is, that's what you're going to need to do. Sometimes additional details for these things are provided in the appendices, like I said, depending on how much details there are. But also additionally, you need to include your measures, any sort of psychological measure needs to be named and potentially cited as well. So now let's go ahead and talk about what will be in the design section of your materials, of your methods paper. So in the design section, what I want you to do is describe the type of design being used in the experiment. So this means specifying the variables as well as the levels of these variables. Additionally, I want you to clearly identify your independent variables, your dependent variables, any control variables, and extraneous variables that might influence your results. And additionally, explain whether your experiment uses a within group or a between group design. So I know some people, this is actually a mix in our class where we have some people doing within groups where they're measuring the same participants across time points and other groups where they're comparing against different groups in general. So you're using maybe a factorial ANOVA if you're doing between groups, using repeated measures ANOVA if you're doing within groups. So that's just something that you need to note here in the design of the studies, whether or not you're using a factorial ANOVA or if this is within subjects or between subjects. And then additionally, if this happens to be a qualitative study, which no one has in this class, you would describe the coding approaches you would have with the qualitative study. So the next subsection of your methods section will be the procedures part of it. So this part of it should be extremely detailed in the procedure used in your experiment. So explains what you had your participants do, how you collected the data, and the order in which the steps all occurred. So you really need to keep this subsection as concise as possible, but keeping it very detailed. So what I mean is there's no room for any other like qualifying statements. You don't need to say things like, of course it happened this way. I don't want to hear anything like that goes I don't need any sentences that explain why this is a good study or something like that. It needs to be very concise. However, I want it to be detailed. It should be lead me through the steps of the study. You know, what happened first, what happened second, what happened third, who was a Confederate in your study? Was there a Confederate? And then really you need to give me all that information. It's really kind of like oftentimes when I write procedures, I oftentimes first started off as a list of things that I did, and I turn that into kind of a paragraph format. So that's something that you can consider doing as well. All right, so now we need to talk about the annoying part of writing a paper, which is APA formatting. Now, this is going to be the reason I really want you to listen, because this is where I'm going to be docking a lot of points if you're not doing APA formatting. This can turn an A paper into a B paper really quick. So that's why I really want to make sure that you're using the correct APA formatting. So this means when you are writing your paper, make sure you're using a standard size piece of paper. Do not send me in things with in a different kind of paper width or something like that. 8.5 by 11 inches with 1-inch margins. Your paper should always be typed, double spaced in a 12-point font. Times New Roman is one recommended font to use. It doesn't have to be Times New Roman, but I like Times New Roman a lot. Every page of your paper should also include a page header on the top left of the page, as well as a page number on the top right of the page. So one thing that you're going to need from to turn in with this assignment is going to be the title page as well. So I want you to notice some of the very specific things that are on this title page. To start, we have a running head at the top of the document. As you can see, as I just underlined here, it says running head in lower in sentence case letters, followed by a colon, and then in all capital, the title of the paper. Next, you need the actual title of the paper as well. This is kind of in the center of the document, upper center. So it's the title of the document, your name, and then Colorado State University is really all you need. You don't need to put my name or anything like that. Additionally, I want you to notice up here that there's a page number that we'll have to focus on here. Even your title page gets a page number. So your title page is page number 1. So the next thing that we're going to need right after your title page comes the abstract. Now an abstract is a very short summary of your paper. It's placed immediately after the title page. Now you might be asking yourself, how many words are in an abstract? Well, according to the rules of APA format, your abstract should be no more than 150 to 250 words. For this paper, I'm accepting 150 words. That's totally fine. You would usually also put some list of keywords under the abstract, but if you don't need to do that here, so you can go ahead and just cross out the keywords. We don't need to do that for this paper. If it comes with it, I won't mind too much. But I want you to also notice that on here, we still have our running head and a page number, and then the abstract. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about some common formatting rules with APA styling. So to start off, we need to talk about in-text citations. So in-text citations are what you use to reference facts or some sort of statement that you made to give yourself credibility, as well as quoting and giving credit to authors who have said the same things in the past. Now, for using APA in-text citation formatting, keep in mind that every single time you have an in-text citation, you need to have a reference that goes along with that as in your reference page as well. So to start off, if we have just one author and we need to cite them, you do the author, the last name of the author, comma, the year of the publication. If there's two authors, you use the two authors as well. So for example, in this case, it will be Fields and Andrew, so it's separated by an ampersand, comma, the year of the publication, which is 2004. If you have more than two authors, list all of them up to 5 once, and then on subsequent references, you can use et al. So for example, Fields, Andrew, and Jones, if there's 3 of them, comma 2004 the first time, then you can use Fields et al. 2004 for the second, third, fourth, and fifth time, and so forth. If there are 6 or more authors, just list the first one and then an et al. To indicate that there are more than 6 authors. So corresponding to in-text citations, for every in-text citation you have, you're going to also have a reference page to talk about those references that you use in text. So the reference section is where you can include any and all references that were used to write your APA paper. Remember, if you cited it, that's your in-text citation. So if you cited it before, it was in the main body of your paper, it must be included in the reference section. This section should begin on a new page with the word references centered and in bold on it, and having its own page.